Welcome to Sam Outside. I'm Sam and I'm outside. Spent a couple hours on this format talking about the benefits of going outside. It is fundamental to our health. It starts with access to fresh air, more oxygen, all right? So there in and of itself is where the greatest immediate effects happen. The moment you have access to fresh air, it does start to affect your circulatory system, all right? It affects your lung capacity. The more oxygen you have, the better it's going to help other processes, including your digestion, your metabolism, how you move, how you think, how you feel. The act of going outside, when you've got exposure to other living things in nature, well, that's where we get the calm. And it all has to do with not only the availability of oxygen, but the availability of daylight. Unfortunately, still waiting for that sun to crest the horizon. I'm up here on a elevated place, but the trees are significant. So I'm waiting for those first moments of daylight. And that's where I'm going to get some red light therapy, right? So the more access to daylight, the better we're able to convert vitamin D. Vitamin D, absolutely essential to all the other aspects of our well-being: metabolism, energy, digestion, cognitive ability, so our creativity, our ability to problem solve, to have attention and have focus, all of those aspects. Making available daylight outdoors also helps with our sleep patterns because it actually regulates and resets our circadian rhythm, our sleep-wake cycle. So if I can get outside multiple times throughout the day, giving access to daylight, my brain and my internal processes will be better linked to the natural wake sleep patterns that my body needs. And then the availability of motion or activity by taking a walk in nature is also going to release endorphins with that active exercise. But that availability of daylight, the availability of more oxygen, being outside exposed to fresh air, that's where I connect and start to produce higher quantities of serotonin. So serotonin is the neurotransmitter that's more closely related to our mood. So when we have conditions, emotional reactions that help us manage our anxiety, that help us manage depression, that help us manage the effects of trauma, stress, all right? That is all serotonin based. So the effects are immediate, but we keep hearing this number 20 minutes, 20 minutes, 20 minutes. It's because studies have shown that that time between 20 minutes and a half hour, we don't see the continued increase in the production of happy chemicals, the endorphins, serotonins, the oxytocins, the dopamine, the act of exercise and participating in nature connection, the activity associated with spending time outside. Those numbers don't change greatly or as significantly after that 20 minutes to a half hour, but they do start immediately. And then the long-lasting implications of that 20 minutes to 30 minutes of outdoor exposure to daylight, our vitamin D production, the decrease in cortisol, which is our stress hormone, the increase of serotonin, which is our mood hormone. The sweet spot is in that 20 minutes, all right? Yeah, you'll get more with more time, but the gains aren't as significant as they are within that first 20 minutes. That's why those numbers are so important. Now, if you can get access to being outside in a more natural environment, like a park, or, if you're like me and you've got the access to mixed forests in nature, yeah, the more diversity, the more biodiversity that is available in your outdoor experience, the greater the benefits. And it's where having access to not only fresh air, oxygen, more oxygen, access to daylight, but if you can do it throughout the day, several times a day, you've got access to different amounts of daylight and different amounts. So you need sunlight on your skin coming through your eyes. And that's where the vitamin D production happens, right? And then the serotonin happens with that fresh air. Now, serotonin, it's a neurotransmitter. associated mostly with, released in the frontal cortex, the part of the brain that's right here in the front, but it's also strongly associated with your gastrointestinal area, right? So it's in your gut. Now, that's where the metabolism, that's where the digestion, and that's where the overall cardiovascular benefits come in with that increase in serotonin. And that's where it affects your sleep, right? So the access to daylight and the production of the vitamin D happens with that exposure, but then the benefits and all of that access, thanks to movement, thanks to fresh air, thanks to daylight, all those happy chemicals greatly increased within that first 20 minutes. Cortisol greatly reduced. Cortisol will keep being decreased with exposure to nature and time outside, but again, I don't want to say decline, but the impact and the production rates do drop off after that 30 minutes. So spending time outside regulates mood thanks to serotonin, availability of vitamin D. Now, the act of moving outdoors, any movement, right? You don't have to think of it as exercise because that requires a little more effort, but just activity. So let's separate the idea of activity from exercise. Walking slow, no real change in my heart rate or my heart rhythm, but just go outside. That's where it starts. And there is a significant portion of our population where that is not an option. So there's a lot of research in the medical field and in education that says we can increase attention, mood, recovery, pain. We can increase the benefits of bringing outdoor sensations indoors. So simply looking at an image of the outdoors, whether it's in a classroom, whether it's in a hospital room, recovery room, greatly increases attention and focus, mood, shortens recovery time. It decreases the amount and the potency of pain medications. So whether it's a student struggling to function in a classroom, or whether it's people who are looking for exercise, but they're forced to do it indoors, having plants, having images, having smells that are associated with outside greatly increase the benefits. So just opening your window, getting fresh air. Now, talking about the benefits of spending time outside, if you think of it in the contrary terms, what's to be gained by spending time inside? Well, you're breathing uncirculated air, stagnant air, so that gives you more access to air pollutants and molds and other things that are going to affect your pulmonary success, your cardiovascular rates. But what it does to the brain, what it does to our emotions, right? So you've got more opportunity for cortisol production and a lack of cortisol management. And then you don't have the availability or access to those other happy chemicals. Now, you might have more access to other people, and that's going to release its own chemicals and have its own benefits, as long as you're surrounded by people that you can enjoy spending time with. But there's something about the geometry of human structures strongly in contrast to the structure and geometry of outdoor environments. That's where that ancient part of our brain that is nature, we are nature, that's where we find the calm. That's where we find the peace and that ability to be creative, to relax. Now, there is a certain awareness that comes to spending time outside, right? That's that ancient part of our survival instinct becomes alert and aware, and we start to scan, we start to navigate and assess our safety subconsciously. So that's where the exposure and the comfort that needs to happen with time outside is essential. So having a one-off, yeah, you're going to feel great, but making it a habit, that's where you start to not only gain the experience and the confidence and the comfort with your outdoor exposure, your natural environment, that's where we can see the continued gains. Right? So find some place outside that is familiar, that is safe, physically, mentally, emotionally. Go outside, be prepared for changes in weather, because you don't want to suffer any side effects of exposure, which might include like stinging insects, like seasonal bugs, right? So not as much of a factor here in late summer, early fall, but if you've seen my videos for early spring, yeah, that is a huge factor. But I still do it because it's good for me. So it's all about going outside, right? Access to daylight, access to oxygen, what it does to the internal processes in my body, despite my lack of activity or exercise, just spending time outside, so beneficial. And if you can do it first thing in the day, help you better manage those unforeseen aspects that are going to actually introduce moments of stress, right? So start with a strong foundation. And if you can, start with some time outside. Within that first hour of waking, so many benefits. And then get outside throughout your day. And that'll reinforce and compound your body's need to be connected and in sync with your natural wake and sleep cycle. Give your brain a chance to relax and reset, refocus, problem solve, be more creative. And if you can get your 8-hour sleep, man, what it does to your digestion, your repair, physically, mentally, emotionally, absolutely amazing. So going outside is a strong factor for overall health as it relates to your diet, as it relates to your sleep, as it relates to all the internal processes, whether it's neurological, cardiovascular, pulmonary. All those aspects are controlled by internal processes linked to access to fresh oxygen, daylight. Go outside. We need it. We need a lot of it. We need it every day. All right. Thank you very much. Please go outside. I appreciate your time and your energy and your support. I'll talk to you again very soon. Thanks.